American democracy needs an awakening. That's what hundreds of protesters in Washington, D.C. who are part of the Democracy Spring movement are saying. Their message? Money is corrupting our democracy and our elections are neither fair nor free. And they have a point. Billionaires and corporations are increasingly influencing who gets into office. Fundraising for the presidential election has already surpassed $1 billion, which is more than double the amount at this point in the 2012 presidential elections. And where is nearly half of that money coming from? Super PACs, which are funneling millions from corporations into supporting campaigns. And while there are limits on how much candidates can accept from individuals, only $2,700 per election, the amount that super PACs can accept is unlimited. A lot of this goes back to the 2010 Supreme Court ruling on Citizens United, which basically implied that corporations are like people, and that political spending falls under free speech, which is protected by the First Amendment. And that's not to mention the role of dark money, which comes from political nonprofits that don't have to disclose their source of funding. Another barrier to fair and free elections? Voter suppression, a set of tactics with the goal to stop people from voting. In 2013, a critical section of the Voting Rights Act was struck down by the Supreme Court, allowing jurisdictions with long histories of voter discrimination to make changes to their voting rules without federal approval first. For an example of how this played out, just look at Arizona's primary this past March. The number of polling places in Arizona's biggest city, Phoenix, was cut by 70%. Officials said it was to save money, but it left people waiting in line for up to 5 hours, meaning many were left unable to vote. But that wasn't all. Some voters arrived at their polling places to find their party registration had been switched before the primary, voiding their votes. And for others, their voter registration had disappeared completely. Then you've got the spread of voter ID laws, which require people to show their government-issued photo ID when they show up to their polling place. The problem is, nearly 11% of American adults don't have one. That's over 20 million people. Proponents say it prevents voter fraud, which is actually really rare. In reality, voter ID laws end up hurting people, including minorities, low-income folks, the elderly, and students. Big money has played a critical role in these voter suppression campaigns. The billionaire Koch brothers are behind a number of organizations that have pushed for voter ID laws and other suppression tactics. These are just some of the ways our elections aren't as democratic as they claim to be, and people aren't keeping quiet about it.
This is what democracy looks like.
Back in D.C., more than 400 Democracy Spring protesters were arrested, and they have plans for more civil disobedience. But are popular protests enough to combat the inequality that voters face?